right. Good afternoon, colleagues. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 67 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Natural Resources. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee is meeting on the Canadian pulp and paper industry study. During the second panel, we're going to be going in camera and having a discussion there on this study and continuing with the draft report on the study of creating a fair and equitable Canadian energy transformation. I'd like to welcome back our guests. We do have one of our panelists who had to withdraw this morning. One is having some technical problems getting in right now. Okay, sounds like everybody's here that is going to be able to join us. I thought we would jump right into it. We've had opening statements last Tuesday, and so I thought we would do one 6-minute round for each of the parties, see where we're at that point. There may be bells at some point this afternoon, so we'll see if we're interrupted or not. If that happens, we'll have to suspend, do the votes, and then we'll see if our witnesses are able to come back. But at this point, I would like to jump right into it. Charlie, Mr. Angus, before we start, do you have something that you need to raise? Otherwise, we'll get right into the questions, and I'll ask any business we hold until after we deal with the witnesses. But, Angus.
Absolutely, Chair. I share your sense of urgency of getting stuff done. I just want to ask, while we're in public, we had talked about a motion to summons Mr. Wadjea to appear. Has that summons been sent? Can you just update us on where we're at with that process?
Okay, briefly, before we went to the full summons, we wanted to reissue a letter of invitation, and that was sent. We are in negotiations right now with his office about trying to find a time for him to appear. It does not appear that he will be in Canada before the end of June, and that's what I will bring forward to the committee to look at their wishes. So when we, after we're done with these witnesses, we'll have the discussion about the next steps. But Mr. Wadjea has expressed a willingness to come and testify before the committee. It's just, it won't be before the session ends. So that's the dilemma that we're going to have. And yeah, so that's what we have. The invitation to the minister has also been issued, and we have not had a response to that yet. We've given all available dates that we would be meeting, and so we're awaiting response on the minister's invitation as well. So with that, and we can continue that conversation, but I think, Mr. Hoback, welcome back to the committee. You're up first, and so if you're ready to go, you have 6 minutes on the clock. Sure, yeah. Okay, which, Monsieur Vaillancourt, I've been asked if you can adjust the boom on your microphone so it's at mouth level. Yeah, just that will help with the quality. Perfect, merci. And Mr. Hoback, if you're ready.
Yep.
Okay, I'll start the clock now. You have 6 minutes.
I'll start off with Ms. Vaillancourt. We'll check to make sure your boom's working and the mic's working. I'm just kind of curious, in Quebec, at the time when Paper Excellence took on Resolute Forest Products, was there any concerns with the union in the sector, or were there any issues there that was highlighted that would have went to the Competition Bureau or to any agency to say that this shouldn't go forward? Chair, I don't know if he's hearing me or not.
For you. Do you want to just check and before I suspend? Okay, colleagues, we're going to have to suspend for a moment. There's obviously a connection issue here, so we're going to suspend just for a minute, do a sound check with Monsieur Vaillancourt, and then we'll return. So for the moment, we're suspended. Bonjour. Repeat from the top. Feeling very generous today. So the 6 minutes is yours.
Mr. Valcourt, I just want to make sure you can hear me. So maybe put your hand up if you're getting translation. Perfect.
Oui.
All right. I'm just kind of curious. At the time when Paper Excellence purchased Resolute Forest Products, did you or your association have any concerns, or did you raise any concerns to the Competition Bureau? And if so, what were those concerns?
Ben, moi, j'ai pas fait.
I didn't submit anything to the Competition Bureau because that isn't something I thought of doing. But yes, we've always had concerns. We have a lot of concerns about forestry practices, the logging rights we might lose. That's the raw materials for us to continue our operations. So we have a lot of questions that we'd like answers to. We're also wondering what the intention of our new owners is. Will they continue operations as they are now? There are electric dams to be considered. We're concerned.
And those are awesome concerns. I agree with you with those concerns. But as far as the forestry, the resource itself, that's administered by the province, is it not? So whether you have the resource there to cut or not isn't necessarily decided by the federal government. It'll be the province that's negotiated with Paper Excellence or Resolute Forest Products in this case that would basically lease that land out to them to harvest. Is that correct?
Oui, vous avez raison.
Yes, that is correct. But the federal government has threatened to put a moratorium on all our logging areas if the resource doesn't recover. So that has workers very concerned because we don't know if we'll be able to continue harvesting.
Shut down because of federal regulations, then who the ownership is or the ownership structure. Is that what you're saying to me?
Oui, ben, dans le fond.
Right. These are all concerns because we don't know really whether we'll be able to continue harvesting. But the other concern about the transaction is not that we're not happy Resolute was bought up. We just want to know what the new owner's real intentions are for the pulp and paper mills. Do they plan to continue making paper? Do they plan to continue making softwood lumber? We don't know.
Those are her questions, and I can't answer those for you. I think those are things we can talk about. Now, one thing I will say, though, you know, Mr. Moffat, you talked about the Asian pulp and paper and their logging practices in Indonesia. And I guess I'm just a little concerned. Why would you think Indonesian regulations would apply here in Canada? And why would you think that would be something that we should be concerned about? Because in Saskatchewan, it is the provincial government, along with First Nations and along with the corporation, in this case Paper Excellence, that actually put together the reforestation plan that does a harvesting plan. So how do you take and square that whole saying, well, look what they did in Indonesia, which has totally different rules, and I'm not saying they did the right thing, by no means. I'm not, but I am saying that if you think that's going to happen here in Canada, you better be dreaming, because it's never going to happen here in Canada. So why would you even draw that into the equation at this point in time? Because you know it's not a reality here in Canada.
Thanks so much for your question. I think what's really relevant to take into account is the track record of Asia Pulp and Paper. And I think it was very helpful to see the media reporting.
That's the problem. You're looking at a track record with a different administration, a different government. This is the Canadian government. This is the provincial government of Saskatchewan. So I don't care what their track record is. The rules are the rules that you have in Saskatchewan. The harvesting is the harvesting process. The reforesting is the reforesting process. And that's done on behalf of the people of Canada and people of Saskatchewan. So I really don't care. If Paper Excellence is breaking the law, I expect somebody to come down on them hard and make sure that's corrected. Now, do we not have the proper laws in place, federally and provincially, to make sure that we have the proper harvesting practices in play, as well as making sure that we have the proper reforestation in play? Because I don't want to be like Mr. Vaillancourt 20 years from now wondering if I have wood to cut. I want to make sure that resource is properly harvested and taken care of. So in your study, are you concerned with Canadian laws? Is that your issue? Because any company, whether it's Domtar, Paper Excellent, Weyerhaeuser, they're going to follow the law of Canada.
Yeah, well, in terms of the connections between Asia Pulp and Paper and Paper Excellence, the media reporting this week has been very helpful in pointing that the government in Nova Scotia itself saw that Asia Pulp and Paper, in their words, actually controlled Paper Excellence. So I think it's very important to think about the track record of this company in other places around the world where it's operated. In terms of your question around the quality of Canadian regulations, I think it's a really important question that you're asking. And in particular, this government has said that Paper Excellence will comply with all relevant Canadian laws. However, what we've seen in a lot of the academic literature and some of the state of the forest across Canada is that a number of those laws aren't up to snuff. And we're seeing...
You bet. If they're not following the law, I agree with you. They should be enforced to the nth degree. That's why I haven't...
Yeah, we're out of time. We're out of time. That's the 6 minutes.
You're taking media as your source.
Yeah, okay. Next up, we have Mr. Blois, who will have 6 minutes on the clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, we're sitting here in Ottawa today, and a lot of the focus, rightfully so, on this conversation thus far has been on paper excellence. But the dynamic here is more broadly about the pulp and paper industry in Canada. And we're sitting here in our nation's capital, and today, of course, major smog, or I'll call it smoke, over the city in terms of the forest fires that are happening across the country. My understanding, more than tenfold of what normally would burn in terms of forests in a given year has already happened in this wildfire season already. My question's to Mr. Vaillancourt, because I know some of the fires have been particularly bad in Quebec. I'm wondering about the concern from the Manufacturers Association in terms of the actual supply of wood into different forestry practices, including pulp and paper. Can he speak about the concern from his association? I presume it's a concern about access to wood, particularly where a number of our forests are being burned, presumably some that would play into his sector.
Right. Given the fires that we're seeing, we do have fears regarding future supply, because without any doubt, some of the wood that's burning at the moment was due to be cut in 3, 4, or 5 years, and then it won't be there because it's burning now. Moreover, after a fire, there are places where we can't harvest, and some areas have to be harvested quickly because some logs would degrade quickly. So the fires in Quebec at the moment are certainly creating concerns about what we'll find and whether we'll have the resources we need in 3 or 4 years.
Your manufacturers, as part of your association, your group, comes from Quebec. There's not necessarily outsized feedstock coming from outside. Is that fair to say that the majority of what goes into your plant is actually provincially cut, harvested, and goes into your process?
Oui, effectivement.
And that's right. The feedstock is cut in our forests. And we cut it into lumber, and then we use what's left to make chips, and we make pulp then paper with those. So secondary and tertiary processing even is carried out in Quebec.
Mr. Vaillancourt, and then I'll go to Mr. Moffat. But obviously the focus is on pulp and paper, and that's an important byproduct. As we talk about the circular economy, as we talk about some of the different opportunities that we have in the country, I have sawmills, for example, in Nova Scotia that are looking increasingly to the idea of mass timber as a primary product. That also plays into conversations around wood vinegar products and renewable diesel. Can you give a little bit of testimony to this committee on the work that you think has to happen either in Quebec or indeed across the country to expand those types of products that could be used like pulp and paper, but others that can be used to make sure that the entire log or the entire tree is being used to the most extent possible?
Oui, très certainement, comme chez nous.
Of course, in our facility, we have a project that provides a higher quality product using the lignin fiber. There are also biomass projects in Quebec that recover what would otherwise be considered waste and to use them as fuel. There's a lot of ideas, a lot of innovation happening at the moment, and we need to advance those ideas.
Moffat, obviously this would be a concern for your organization, which is focused on environmental outcomes. Any thoughts, or is there any position that Greenpeace has in relation to forestry practices that we can try to reduce the likelihood of fires? I know that's not always possible, but just even certain, whether it's increased silviculture, if it's increased targeting harvests, particularly after major weather events. I think about Nova Scotia, for example. We just had Hurricane Fiona. There are hundreds of thousands of downed trees within the forests. What can be done in your organization's view, or what should be done to help try to mitigate those in a way that supports the forestry sector, but also maybe reduces the risk of major forest fires moving forward?
Thanks for the question. I think two big things need to happen. I think first and foremost, this government needs to get emissions under control. Amongst G7 nations, this government has done a very poor job in reducing our national greenhouse gas emissions. And the science is very clear that without reducing emissions, these wildfires are going to continue to grow year on year. I think the other thing that we really need to see happen is to be restoring Indigenous governance to the forests. So you'll be aware, as will many of your colleagues, that the industrialization of many of these forests has severely harmed their resilience in the face of climate change and extreme weather events. And so what I would say, in addition to massively reducing the emissions that continue to grow in this country, we need to be restoring Indigenous governance to the forests so that the fire preventive measures that many nations across the country have conducted here since time immemorial, and which colonialism actually disrupted, can be put in place back into the land. And so that Indigenous guardianship can play an important part in building a more fire resilient future for the country.
Okay, thank you. We're out of time on that one. We're now going to go to Monsieur Simard, who will have 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, John.
Thank you, Mr. Vaillancourt. For the committee's benefit, I would like to point out that we set up a vigilance committee together with a number of unions involved in forest products, with Resolute Forest Products, and there will be a meeting with the company next Monday. A report will be produced, and I would like you to indicate the contentious points that you plan to raise at the meeting with the new owners next Monday. We could also take account of those in the report that will conclude this study. Please let the committee know what you plan to bring up next Monday. Of course, one point that's creating a lot of concern is our pension funds. This is a concern both for current and retired employees. Will pension funds be covered because the fund is in deficit, and it is a significant part of the region's economy? Do they plan to continue keeping the forest products market as we knew it, with Resolute making lumber, making pulp and paper, or is their vision different? Did they buy us just for the craft mill? What's going to happen to the dam? So we want to know what their intentions are. We're very concerned. Thank you. A few moments ago, a colleague brought up the supply challenge given the forest fires raging in the province. Mr. Blois was talking about that. I know that one of the challenges for Resolute is the dispute, I should say, with the U.S. 583 million had been held back given the softwood lumber dispute with the U.S. Are you feeling the repercussions of that in investment that is not being made in the facilities? Yes. Now, it's hard to say what the extent of the impact is. There's no doubt that the amounts that are held in trust or in escrow somewhere, well, we don't have them to invest in our current processes. Thank you. You spoke of concerns engendered by the threat of the federal government's order on forest caribou. We know that Quebec's plan will soon be tabled. That's within a few weeks. It was slated for June. So if I understand correctly, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for forestry sector unions, that the application of that order is an unacceptable solution. Yes, because what it means for us is a huge loss in our feedstock. And a lot of workers will be out of a job because if there's nothing to process, then where do they go? This is the largest industry in the region. It'll become a ghost region. Thank you. A quick question for Mr. Moffat. You talked about Asian Pulp and Paper's practices, which were questionable. You compared the various forest management regimes. Quebec's is different from Ontario's and also different from Alberta's. If we are to analyze the impact of new players like Asian Pulp and Paper, which directs excellence, what would the impact be? Have you looked at these different management systems?
We have bells have just started. The lights. Okay, there they are. It has started. So a vote has been called. As I understand, it's 30-minute bells. And then we have 10 minutes to vote and then 10 minutes to come back. So it's going to be 50 minutes. I need to ask our witnesses if they are prepared to stay and perhaps come back. The other option would be for us to continue. Mr. Simard has a minute 25 seconds left in the clock, and Mr. Angus would have 6 minutes. Or we can release our witnesses and then when we return, come back in camera to continue with our report. So I turn to the will of the committee. I do need unanimous consent to continue. Or if Mr. Angus, I want everybody to have their fair turn. Charlie, I'll go to you quickly for your input.
Well, thank you. We have a lot of work to do. I'm asking for the goodwill of my colleagues. Made sure that they had opportunity to speak. If we finish off this first round, then we can shut it down and then go in camera. And I'm sure we'll be all very collegial when we go in camera. But I would like my opportunity to finish my round of questioning.
Okay, so I'll ask the question: do we have unanimous consent to finish off the 7.5 minutes?
You need unanimous consent?
Yes, yeah, to go through bells. We can't continue without full agreement from the committee. Okay, we don't have unanimous consent, so we will have to suspend the meeting at this point. I'll get the clerk to check with our two witnesses. I thank you so much for coming back this second time. If you are available still in 40 minutes, we'll have 7.5 minutes of time that we would need from you. Or if you're unavailable, that is completely up to your call. I'll thank you now for having been so flexible in providing your witness. And when we're back in 40 minutes, we'll check and see if you're here or not. But in the meantime, I need to suspend our meeting. So we'll see everybody after.
Chair.
Sorry, Charlie, we're suspended. Welcome back, members, and thank you for to our witnesses. And I didn't mention you specifically, but we have Gilles Vaillancourt and Shane Moffat. So really appreciate your patience over this last week and these interruptions today. We'd left off with Monsieur Simard having a minute and a half on the clock. He did have a question that had been put out there just before we ended, so if he wants to paraphrase it, and then I'll start the clock for him. And then we'll go to Mr. Angus for his 6 minutes, and then we'll suspend and go in camera. So, Monsieur Simard,
Merci.
let you. And when you're done that, I will
Merci.
start.
Merci beaucoup, John.
Thank you very much, John. Before we left earlier, Mr. Moffat, I was wondering, with the presentation you gave last week to the committee, you talked about different practices of Asia pulp and paper. And I was wondering if during your research and your analysis, you took into account the fact that there are different regimes in Canada. There is one in Quebec, and often those are very strict. So did you analyze the different regimes in the country?
Question. I've been looking at Paper Excellence's takeover of the logging sector in Canada for over a decade now. And as part of that work, I've been looking at their operations in a number of different provinces within Canada and jurisdictions outside of Canada. As part of that, I've certainly done a number of analyses of the provincial regimes, logging regimes in Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia in particular. But for the purposes of this report that we put out in the fall, that was focused on ensuring the Canadian public has as much information as possible, as well as our elected representatives like yourselves, so that we can make the most informed choices about this company's next steps and its future in Canada.
Je comprends très bien.
I understand very well, but you will agree with me that Paper Excellence, as any other forestry business, cannot do whatever it wants in the forest. Logging rights are attributed in Quebec along with respect for the law. And I know that they are associated with some activities. And do you agree that they cannot just do what they want in Canada's forests and Quebec's forests?
I think it's important that we don't underemphasize the influence that a company the size of Paper Excellence will have on these forests. It's certainly true to say that there are provincial regimes which put in place certain requirements and certain standards, many of which are currently quite weak. But the influence and the ability of Paper Excellence, both to lobby at the provincial level, to lobby at the federal level, to influence some of these legislations and policies that we see, as well as their huge impact on the ground. And I think it was the Forest Products Association of Canada that provided a figure of 22 million hectares. I think that gives us a bit of a sense of the enormous influence that they're going to have over these forests, irrespective of the relative strength or otherwise of the provincial regimes.
Okay, thank you. We're out of time now, and we'll go to Mr. Angus, who will have his 6 minutes.
Thank you so much for taking the time to stay. There is no other industry in this country, I think, that touches as many people as forestry, because the towns that rely on them across Canada are completely dependent on them. And now I know some of my colleagues around the table don't think it's all that big a deal that 22 million hectares of Canadian forests were taken up by a single man, whose family connections are tied to some very, very controversial international operations, and he's the sole owner. I personally think that a question of net benefit should have been asked and wasn't asked when the Domtar and Resolute takeovers were handled by the Wijaya family. Now, Mr. Moffat, we were told by ISCD that didn't bother to do a net benefit test, that they said that the company is based in Netherlands. Does that seem credible to you?
That does not reflect our findings of the totality of the ownership structure of Paper Excellence, no.
Well, I was wondering whether or not ISCD didn't bother to check even though, there's been multiple reports about the connections to Asia Pulp and Paper. But the ISED's guidance on the filling out forms is very specific. It's about the ultimate controller's country of origin. So why would, for example, Premier McNeil fly all the way to Shanghai to meet with the Wijayas when government representatives told us that this is set up in the Netherlands? Do you believe that there's a good possibility that this WTO provision that they were talking about is to protect a company that is rooted at their headquarters in Shanghai?
From what I've seen, that very may well be the case. I haven't seen anything to disprove that.
Right. Now, we've also hearing from my colleagues that as long as, they're here, it's okay. But we look at what happened in Pictou Landing. Boat Harbor Lagoon is now the largest toxic site in Nova Scotia. That toxic effluent was being pumped right into the waters. And when the Premier and province of Nova Scotia attempted to get Paper Excellence, Northern Pulp and Paper, to clean up the mess, they turned around and shut the mill down, got rid of the workers, and launched a $450 million lawsuit against Nova Scotia. Would that seem to be part of the pattern that you've tracked of Asia Pulp and Paper's activities elsewhere in other jurisdictions?
That would be very consistent with what we've seen from both Sinarmas and Asia Pulp and Paper in a number of jurisdictions, and I think is a really good example of the kind of concerns that we have around the accountability of paper excellence as it kind of really takes over forests across Canada.
I asked that question because we have been told by whistleblowers from Asia Pulp and Paper that Paper Excellence, which may be Asia Pulp and Paper in some form or another, that the reason they're in Canada is a fiber grab, that their control of the mills is less important than their control of fiber to feed the big China machine. So when the mill was shut down in Pictou Landing, the Northern Pulp and Paper Excellence was still allowed to continue cutting. So where did that fiber go? That fiber went to Woodland Pulp in Maine. Now, Woodland Pulp in Maine has recently been purchased by the International Grand Investment Corporation, which is Hong Kong based. And the mill manager at one point flew over to Shanghai to meet with, guess who? The Wijayas. Halifax Examiner is telling us that the pulp that was coming from Nova Scotia is now going through the Woodland Pulp operations, which seems to be a front for Asia Pulp and Paper, and that pulp is being transported to China. So would it be reasonable to say that we need to look at what kind of benefit is to Canadians to have this company controlling so much market through so many murky shell companies shifting our forest products to China?
I guess I don't know what could be worse. Whether A, the government approved this deal, not knowing how deeply connected Paper Excellence is to APP and Sinarmas, or B, they did know and they didn't approve it anyways, because the implications, the long-term implications for the logging industry in terms of where the fiber is going to go, who's going to be controlling it, will that be supporting good local jobs, or will it be all shipped out to build jobs elsewhere? Those are fundamental questions that remain unanswered.
It is my concern because I've seen 3 of our pulp and paper operations shut down and people are desperate. So if the company comes back and says, well, we'll continue to cut and save some jobs, there will be push to make that happen. But if the company that's shutting those mills down is doing it so that they can continue to cut and ship to China, I have a problem with that. So I just want to close on questioning you. I was contacted by a Canadian executive who told me that when he had to meet with Asia Pulp and Paper, they told him he had to talk to Jackson Wijaya. Are we being taken for suckers here? Is Jackson Wijaya and the Wijaya family, Asia Pulp and Paper, Sinarmas, are they in control of Paper Excellence? We have not done a review of it. And are they in control of 22 million hectares of forest? Is Jackson Wijaya part of Asia Pulp and Paper as far as you've been able to ascertain?
From what we have been able to determine is that Paper Excellence is directed by the Sinner Mass Group, and Asia Pulp and Paper can be considered a sister company of Paper Excellence within the Sinner Mass family and directed by Sinner Mass.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're out of time. So to our witnesses, thank you again for your flexibility. We really appreciate you being here. And for colleagues, we're going to suspend now. There's for those online, a separate login for the closed session. So log off of this session and then log back in. We'll see everybody back in 5 minutes or less.
you.